Well, hi guys, welcome back to the spare room. It's another myfordboy engine update. There's still a few bits to make and there's a lot of bits to finish. This still needs quite a lot of work with the file and the end corners taken off and clean up and stuff and some holes. But really the things we need, if we have a look, is a conrod to go between this pin and this pin, which isn't hugely long, and then we can go ahead and bolt this down on the actual machine. We need a piston valve in here, which is something I've been sort of putting off, to be honest, because it's not a particularly, it's a bit scary to get the right fit. I think it'll run with a bit loose fit, but it'd be nice to get it as good a fit as myfordboy has. It needs an eccentric in here, and then it needs a rod with a bend in it to go between here and the eccentric. It needs a lubricator, and it needs some pipes, and this space here needs a bit of a clean up. So once this is bolted on, we can mark this off and we can clean up this here so there's no overhang. So there's still a bit to do. I have been putting off the piston valve thing and it's not going to probably happen this video. But let's have a bit of a look at the drawings. There's our lubricator still to do and our cladding, which it says brass or tin plate. myfordboy's used a piece of brass tube. I don't have a piece of brass tube the right size. I've got a piece of brass tube, but I don't think it's going to do the job. This is the piston valve, which is quite simple. We've done those bits. This is the eccentric rod with the bend in it, and this is the eccentric, which actually works on this pin here on the back. There's a pin there, and that gives our reversing action. The base is sort of starting to look. We've still got to drill these 2 holes in here, or 3 holes in here, but that's not a huge job either. This cover just needs a little bit of a clean up. I'd like to see just a little bit of a chamfer around the outside to clean it up. I've got a piece of rod or a piece of bar. And when we put that together and line him up, it's actually not going to be far out, so we're pretty pleased about that. So the thing to do would be to give this a bit of a sand up and clean whatever that is on there off, and mark him out and drill our 2 holes and cut him out with a hacksaw, and then I'm probably just going to put him in the shape of ice and clean that up nicely each side. So my battery went flat last night when I was making this. This is what I've got. It's just a piece of metal with 2 holes in it. All I've done is marked it out, the centre line and the 2 centres, and I've just drilled them and made them neatly to the right sizes. It's pretty simple, and I set it up on a couple of drills in the shape of ice and machined each side down. I didn't show you that because the shape is moving around like a bowl of jelly really. and it needs a stand before we do any serious shaper work. I'm not that happy with it at the moment. So I've just done that and then cleaned them up on a bit of emery paper. So I've got that little conrod, which is a very basic part. I've got a 4BA screw that screws in here. I've shortened that up a bit. Like that. This needs a bush to go on there and lock on, and that's what the conrod slides on. Now there's a 170 thou gap in there for the spacer, for the eccentric, and the next thing will be to get this to line up somewhere near. So next part's to make a bush for there. I'll find a bit of steel, we'll set it up in the, I reckon a bit of that'll do. Set that up in the 3 drawer and machine it to fit the outside, drill it to fit the bush and part it off. And last job on the little bush, once it's been machined to size and parted off, just to trim it up nicely. Strip him out of the collet carefully without dropping him. It's not very big. And fit him on the bolt like that, and just check again when we sit it together that there's a little bit of the bush sticking out, so there's some clearance. And that's that dot mounted up. So if we put this in the right spot there, there's quite a gap here. We got what looks like about 220 thou, and we only need 170, which is back in there. So we'll have to have a bit of a think about that. But probably what we need is to make this pin. Next job, just add a little bit of steel. And it's almost impossible to find the centre of that there and the centre spot, and myfordboy's lined this up actually with a square this way on the surface plate or on the bed of his milling machine, and he's found the centre spot and is marked that as being the place it goes. Now that's not really going to work for us, because I don't know how you would go about finding the centre spot there. Probably could put a bit of tape on it there and a bit of tape and measure the distance and then move it back in, but getting it to stay there is a bit difficult too. So what I'm going to do is pull it right out and move it right to the end here. So that it touches, mark the front, and then move it right to the end here and pull it right out so it touches, and mark that side, and then we're going to move it in between, halfway between the marks. So that's how I'm going to do it. And when I've done that, I'm going to clamp this on here, and we're going to measure this here just to see what sort of distance we got. If it's within about 20 thou, I think we're just going to make the eccentric a little bit wider, which isn't going to hurt anything. If it's more than that, I'm going to have a bit of a think about how I'm going to do this. So let's make a pin for this with just a bit of wire for a start, and look at marking it out. So after a bit of stuffing around, I've got a little 8BA pin here. Come on, focus. It's not very big, it's got a nut to go on it. The thread on the end. and that goes through there. myfordboy hasn't really provided a lot of detail about what he used or how it worked, but if you look at the pictures of the finished engine, that's sort of what he's got. So we'll put that through there, and that's a pretty nice fit. There's not a lot of wiggle or anything in there. And put the nut back on and line all this up probably, or try to, because it's a bit top heavy and there's not really enough hands to do this. So I've marked this at each end, so the closest one there, I'll put a mark there, and then at the other end I'll put a mark there. Now I'm marked in between halfway, so that's the position this needs to be in. Because I think my block is a fraction thicker than myfordboy's, and a couple of other little factors that aren't quite right, that's the positions for these two holes. What's happened is that this distance here, if we look at that, instead of being 170 thousandths of an inch like it's supposed to be, it's actually about 220. So there's a couple of things I could do, and probably what I will do is just make this to match and put a little bit of a bend in this crank here. So that's not a huge deal. The next job is to spot drill these, just to mark them and drill them through and tap them. We've got a couple of bolts to go in there. Have a look in our BA bolt assortment. A couple of them that drop in there and screw up. Tab 4BA. So when you're doing this and spotting these two holes, just do one at a time, because if you mark both of them, one of them's going to move and you're going to find they're not going to line up. What we found is that this screw here that goes in the valve plate is just a fraction long, so I'm going to shorten that one up, and probably the other one as well. But while we're on this job, I'm just going to spot this one again. We can take him off and tap him again and bolt it up. So I've shortened this screw up just with a file, held him in the 3-jaw by the head, and just give him a rub with a file till he's the right length. They're only soft screws. I've tapped and drilled both of these. This is in there nicely. It's actually about 230 thou if I measure that nice and accurately. That's 50 thou more than it should be. So what I'm probably going to do is just put a bit of a bend in here, just nice and carefully in the vise, so that works. But I'm going to make the eccentric first and then line him up afterwards. I have just spot drilled this very carefully right through. There's a hole goes through that, and if we have a look at the drawing, which is the main drawing, it says there's a 1/4 inch hole transferred from valve chest. So we've transferred it. I'm going to drill a 1/4 inch hole in there. We'll put him back together, put some oil on him, put the flywheel on him, and have a look at our progress so far. So there's that hole. That's for one of the ports. It's just threaded here. I'm not sure whether I think it's probably exhaust. No, it's steam inlet, I think. goes in that hole. We've got the 2 holes bolted up there. These nice spanners are well worth the trouble. I'm really pleased with them. I've been sent some money by a viewer, and I'm sure he's watching this, to buy some Whitworth spanners for the shaper and a couple of other machines that I have. Struggling to find some, but it really is a bit of a struggle actually. And they'll have to come from the UK, and I have planned a holiday to London, or a trip to London in the next little while. So maybe I'm just going to pick a set up over there. I'll get them posted through. But a set of Whitworth spanners would be wonderful. And I've got a few old second-hand ones and a few that are stretched and broken, etc, etc, etc. But I'd like a new set, and that's going to happen eventually. I'll just run some oil over this. I'm not going to push that right on because it needs a flat on the crankshaft for the little grub screw, and if I put it on and do it up, it's going to damage the shaft, so I'm not going to do that. But if we have a bit of a look, that's all pretty much looking pretty sweet there. I'm going to call this a wrap on this video. What is there still to make? There's an eccentric to go in here, and there's another rod, and there's the spool valve or the piston valve which goes in there, and some fittings and some cladding for the outside here, which we've got to still think about. This whole tripod thing is really getting to me. It's starting to fall apart. I did make one, but I need something decent for a camera in this workshop, and that's going to happen. Something I don't have to trip over every time I turn around or duck underneath. It's a bit claustrophobic here as it is, so that's going to be a project not too far away too. So anyway, thanks for watching, and be kind to each other, and leave us a comment, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. More soon, guys.